All right, everyone. Welcome back to our final pre-recorded segment of the Makers Arcade. I'm your host, Matt. You probably just saw me live. And joining me are the two halves of Seemingly Pointless, the brothers Cox, James and Joe. Hello, Joe. Hello, James. How's everyone doing?
Pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah.
Doing?
Go ahead, James.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say I'm doing pretty good. It's a Wednesday when we're recording this, so I got 2 days, and then I'm excited to watch MakersPlay.
You've also got this great thing. I don't know if you can see this, where like Baby Yoda keeps sneaking into your filter. It's a lot of fun.
I don't want to talk about it.
All right, that's fair. Could you each tell the people at home a little bit about yourselves, who you are, what you do, why you're here?
Yeah, Joe, do you want to start?
If you want me to.
Okay.
I'm Joe. I guess I've been making games with James now for probably, I don't want to say like a decade, but I feel like it's almost coming on to a decade now. 2012, if I'm not mistaken, is probably like the year we started actually like kind of doing stuff together like this.
Yeah, I'm looking to it right now.
I guess outside of games, I work in the film industry in the art department, and excited to be a part of the festival this year.
Yeah, Joe, I just did the math. It is from 2012. That's crazy.
I mean, y'all got to do something next year, right? Like,
Yeah,
close
yeah,
up shop.
Yeah. Well, it'll be time. Yeah, that's the amount of time we set on it. So yeah, I've been making games with Joe since 2012. And I think something that really interests me about video games is using mechanics and narratives to impart particular emotions and feelings onto the player. There's a specific kind of I don't want to say pain, but there's a specific kind of feeling you can kind of inflict on players that books and films don't quite hit right with. You can't make them feel the same kind of anxiety or awe or relief, or just kind of this adrenaline of like, yes, I can't believe I was able to climb that hill, as you can do in a video game, without actually climbing a hill in real life. But even that takes longer and may not be as juicy or rewarding.
It's fascinating that you describe it that way. I know we're showing two games of yours. I was planning on talking about Garf MD first, but I would be remiss to not mention the other one is eCheese Zone, which is labeled as a party punishment game. When you describe a game that way, what is the reaction you expect people to have?
Ideally, it buys us enough time for them to listen to us explain the game more.
That's fair, actually.
Yeah, it's definitely much more of a pitch, pitch slogan than it's like a running definition, because I'm sure there's a better, more academic term that could be used to describe the game.
I was telling Joe, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, that this game Loop Hero that I've recently become addicted to. Mm-hmm. There's been articles written about how they didn't know how to pitch the game because the game was so different from everything else. So they had to figure out how to describe to Devolver Digital what they were making when it was an experience you couldn't really understand unless you were playing it. And it's been really interesting reading about their experience because I'm trying to learn something from that as we move forward and continue to try to describe eCheese Zone.
Yeah, let's actually start with that. Since we're already on it. So eCheese Zone is a game where I vividly remember seeing it for the first time. It must have been 4 years ago. I think it was the first year that y'all were showing at MagFest. And I hadn't done any work at this point in my career. I hadn't done any sort of volunteer work for cons or anything like this yet. And I was absolutely floored by the notion of just like, it was a game that made almost no sense in context and certainly wouldn't work anywhere outside of a festival. Which, not to detract from your upcoming Steam release, and by all means, everyone go to look up eCheese Zone on Steam, wishlist it. We're 2 months away. I'm extremely excited for the home release. But it is, I guess let's start with how I guess actually to go back to how we got on this topic, how would you describe the eCheese zone to someone who's never seen it before?
Jay, do you want to try to give it a tackle?
Sure. I should probably put an asterisk on the release date. It's a suggested release date right now.
It's a suggested buy for me. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Deadline that's met or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think the eCheese zone sort of gets off on the idea of putting someone in the driver's seat, and they're behind the wheel, but they have no clue what they're doing, and everyone else in the car is screaming at them about how they should be doing something, but they likely have as little information as the person actually playing the game.
That's good. I haven't thought about it from that angle. Yeah, it's like a game where you don't want to play, but you have to try to pitch that in like a what kind of a prole like Shakespeare theater where you want to be down. You want to be down in the pit watching the play, but you don't want to have the tomatoes thrown at you. It's like this weird.
Yeah. All the passengers are on the bus, but the driver didn't show up, and it's like, well, I want to get to Vegas in 5 hours, so
yeah, someone's got to take
someone's gonna learn how to drive this thing.
Yeah. The way I try to pitch the eCheese zone is it's a crowd punishment party game where it allows you to appreciate the event or the party. The way we're trying to make it sound like it can fit for home venues is that most party games require you to play in rounds. They require you to be present for the duration of it, and they only have up to like 4 or 6 or 12 players. Like the fact that Runbow or some of these games, or like Super Smash Bros. Brawl, can have up to like so many players, is a selling point for these games. Like now you can have 16 potential people playing. And it's like that's great if you have a gathering that only 16 people are at, but what if there's like one person extra, or what if not enough people want to play? Like, how do you deal with that? So what I like about the eCheese zone is that it's a game where it's like, hey, this game is going to run for the duration of your event. Right now we're planning to add in a timer so you can adjust it a little bit. Like we can make it so it's like, okay, I want this game to play from then to then. We're not going to make it, we're not going to give you more than like 6 hours because that's just going to be ridiculously easy. But we want to make sure that if you need to have a little bit of extra time, you can add it for the event. But the idea is that, only one person has to play, like actively sit there and play, but everyone can still participate because you can be taking notes. You can be trying to scribble down what happened last time. You can try to theorize. And then it has these long gaps where you can go and enjoy the party, use the bathroom, you talk to some other people. If it's like an event like MagFest, you go check out other games, you go do other things, you see a panel. But then, of course, the trick of the game is that the first rule of eCheese zone is that the timer is never accurate. And it straight up shows you that it's not accurate because you see people clicking away the seconds. Like the game never lies to you. It reveals all the information as you're looking at it. It's just you're very quickly taught as a punishment at the very beginning, I have to pay attention and I have to keep track of these little things. So that's the way I try to describe it.
And it's a deeply collaborative experience. Because part of the punishment is like you need to hear what everyone else did. You need to know, and that's why at Mag it got to the point where obviously the installation space was just plastered in Post-it notes, which was a lot of fun to write and to draw on. And also there was like a text chain of people just being like, "Hey, we'll text you when the timer's up." And we'll all come back to the arcade and we'll all try to figure out what the hell to do next.
I love that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I wouldn't say the eCheese zone is like totally unprecedented. If you look at the stuff James and I have worked on, spectacle is usually something that comes into play one way or another. And jogging my memory here, I believe one of the first things we worked on together was a physical game for Come Out and Play that won Best Spectacle that year. So it's kind of been all downhill from there, I think.
And Come Out and Play, for reference, is I don't want to say fully, but it's a mostly analog games. So they have very few digital games. And it used to take place in New York pre-pandemic. But you know, for anyone that doesn't know about it, it was a very cool event. So you kind of create these like alternative sports, and then the goal of the festival, as far as I was aware, is it gathers people to play these cool things that you may not have crowds otherwise to participate in,
Yeah,
which is
if I
really
recall, that
awesome.
one's usually like outdoors, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, I've only managed to go once, but it was this kind of surreal experience because it was almost like a flash mob of like everyone come to this plaza and then we're gonna
Yeah,
play some
yeah.
games.
And it's funny because I think people tend to like in the game community, like the gamer community sort of dismisses the idea of like physical games as something as valid as like a digital expression, but
Mhm.
the original games were physical.
Yeah, we've been playing with physical games much longer than we have digital ones.
You
Yes,
call those grandpa's games?
grandpa's
I'm
games.
gonna sign and play some grandpa's games. Come on, kids.
Come on, kids, go kick that can.
Yeah.
I would show up for like a collaborative can kicking event for sure. Like,
A future where they don't have cans anymore, so it's just like biodegradable bags. That's what my grandpa used to play.
so it is a collaborative. It's a eCheese Zone is sort of like it's very installation based. Was that a design space that y'all had worked in before? Because it is like it's a presentation, it's a show, like down to the curtains on the side of the waiting screen at the drum roll, but the whole thing has this like I remember I remember looking at the floor plan when we were like setting up our tabling booth, and you said we want a TV and then a bunch of space and then a table.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's funny. That's an interesting one because it sort of ties back into the spectacle of it
Yeah.
all. Sort of the P.T. Barnum uh, leaning into the showmanship in presentation, and something I kind of recognized. I want to say early on in game design, and this is something I've always been interested. Is just sort of a curated space, or sort of creating a liminal space that draws people to something. And kind of what I think I quickly realized is that even if you have a game and you're showing it somewhere public, people aren't really attracted to it if it's just like an iPad on a cocktail table or something. There kind of needs to be that like spark to get people, a magnet to get people coming towards it or interacting with it. And I guess I tried to sort of make it like a confluence of a bunch of different things I studied in college, and just sort of personal interests in the idea of creating the spectacle.
And that's how we wound up with cheese soda and like
Mhm.
I think I remember talking to you about this like just off the record months ago. Why cheese? Why Cliffy? How did that start?
That was all purely Joe. So I'll let him take their ins on that one. But I do want to preface Joe's underselling himself a little bit. I think it's a is it a certificate in museum curation or museum
Yeah, I got
sciences?
like one of those sort of, I guess it was like a grad level, like mixed undergrad, grad level museum certificate, like museum practices certificate in college, in part because I was unable to determine what minor I would like to pick up, but also because it tied a lot into what my major was at the time, which was in effect like integrated media. Um, so it worked out well together. At least
Yeah.
those pieces did.
Yeah, so I just want to throw out that Joe is very well versed in how to make a display pop and how to make those physical aspects of a game shine, and it's definitely helped us like invaluably. I can't imagine what Ichizone would have been like if it wasn't for Joe's kind of background in that,
I think part of it also goes into this. It's like an argument you hear a lot, like sort of and people are now saying, oh, it's over, oh, it's not over. The idea of like our game's art and this and that. And I think kind of hopefully the sweet spot we're hitting is we found a way to recontextualize a video game as something that could be presented in an art space, like a capital A art space. And then people will be like, that makes sense here. But, the reality is you could just strip away its like physical being and then, oh, okay, that's a thing you play online. I think the context is hugely important in art. And it's funny, that's something we were talking about before we started recording as well. I guess I should loop back into Clippy now. Yeah, so Clippy Cheese was like an amalgamation of snack product mascots that I was really interested in at the time. James and I were in Australia for a conference, a game conference, and after the conference ended, we traveled across pretty much across the continent with our friend Louis Roots, who also helped make Garf MD. But as we kept going across, it was funny because you could tell the parallels between, like the gas station products you'd find in the US and like the gas station products you'd find in Australia, where everything just kind of felt like 1 or 2 degrees off, felt just off brand enough. So I think it kind of like it reignited this interest in icons and mascots, specifically in like junk food for children.
Yeah, and I remember we actually made I think the original creation of eCheese and Garf MD, I think they actually took place like 2 days apart.
Yeah, it was like
I didn't even think about that until right now. I mean, obviously the original eCheese zone was purposefully deleted the night after it was created. And that's its own little separate story. But the Garf MD thing was made for a Ludum Dare, and then it just wasn't until the pandemic came around that I actually had time to just finish coding all the features and stuff that we had originally planned to put into it. And even with that being said, I'm still struggling to figure out if the things I want to add to it should be sequel games, or if I should just add these as extra chapters after you beat the first chapter. I kind of want to do that one because that seems a little more in line with like a narrative kind of visual dating novels, like you get that kind of thing versus like a subsequent game. I just don't want to be this weird thing where it's like, what, I already downloaded it and I didn't know there was more content. Not that like anyone's actually playing it, but it's just, I don't want to be
there are multiple YouTube playthroughs of the game.
No, really? I know of one.
Yeah, clearly we aren't strangers of kitsch.
Yeah.
I do actually. So both of these games then started at game jams, right? Because if I recall, eCheese Zone was part of Delete Jam, which you've already stated what the core rule of it is. Games that are not meant to survive past their initial unveiling. What was the theme for Garf for the Ludum Dare that led to Garf?
I'm trying to look into it now. I don't remember anymore.
It had to, I don't.
Do you remember what it was?
It may have been medicine or something, probably.
I'm gonna
like.
I can dig for it as we're talking. I know they're
always kind of like ephemeral in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now is the time to sort of transition to game number 2. And for anyone watching, this is a narrative-heavy game, so obviously we're going to be spoiling a few little things. If you want to go into the Garf MD experience fresh, don't pause the video because that's bad for stream metrics, but you can mute the tab. Don't mute the stream. If you mute the stream, Bezos will know. But if you mute like the tab in Chrome, he has no idea, and we still get like full credit for your attention. You made a game where Garfield's a doctor, and you, the player, is also a doctor, and you get to seduce Garfield. And it's beautiful, but it's also a little difficult. I feel like when my parents check in with me and ask how I'm doing and I say I'm playing a lot of video games, that's the sort of thing that they're afraid I'd be spending my time on. I suspect my parents are watching the stream right now. If you could do me a favor, could you explain to Deborah and Peter why I had to play a game about seducing Garfield?
Well, I mean, Garfield's a very handsome cat. True. And given the way he pranks John all the time, I don't see a reality where he wouldn't be a doctor. So honestly, we were just trying to continue the legacy of Garfield in a way that would honor the source material. I don't think it's a joking matter either. I think that it's really insensitive that you think that this is a massive joke. I think Garfield deserves way more credit than anyone here is giving them.
I mean,
after we released it, Jim Davis actually called and he said, "Thank you," and then hung up. So you
had to take the recording to the lab to make sure it was him.
Oh no, I watched
it was
Jim
an
Davis
unlisted
interviews.
number, but I know it was him.
Yeah,
so.
it was kind of like a signature.
Voice.
It was like a signature, but for a thank you. Like if you watch enough of his recordings, at the end of every one of his recordings, he says thank you and does a little curtsy and he leaves. We could recognize it from that. Yeah.
Do you think like?
No, we don't think. We know. We know it was Jim Davis.
No, I'm sorry. I want us to rewind back into the narrative here, because I'm trying to think of like, do you think that Garfield's modern day apathy comes from a sort of med school burnout phase, or do you think that there's sort of a Zen intellect that's running in the background? Because med school, that's not easy to do, and I'm assuming that he's a fully accredited doctor. I mean, he has both letters and everything, and so I'm trying to think of like, I'm just trying to imagine, I guess, what college Garfield was like, because it clearly set him on a good trajectory.
I think you'd have to sort of backpedal and figure out what like Dr. House was like in college. And that'd probably give you a pretty good trajectory. Because
are they making that?
They both have.
Like, they should make that.
People. For House it's opioids, and then for Garfield it's lasagna. So like they have vices.
You know what? Dr. House MD meets young Sheldon. You make young House. And then you have an episode named Lupus where his neighbor's dog's name is Lupus, and that's where he gets his whole lupus thing from.
You could get what is Doogie Howser? I think
they need to mine the House show for every little joke and give it a backstory. Like when Han Solo shows up and he says, "What's your clan?" He says, "I'm alone." And then the guard says, Solo. And then everyone's like, ah! Because it can't just be a name. There has to be a story.
Well, it's, Prince Harry's last name is Solo.
Yeah.
I looked up a couple, I was like trying to figure this out. Like,
wait, no, what? Huh? No, you're joking. What?
No, so I was trying to figure this out. When all this stuff was bubbling up about, the royal family recently, I was like, what is this guy's name? And you know how like there's that joke that goes around about how like you don't trust people with like 2 first names, you don't trust people with 3 first names. Harry has 4 first names, no last name.
It's Harry Charles Albert David.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, maybe make one of those your last name. I guess not.
Like, let's just be honest. We don't really want him in the U.S. We moved here specifically to get away from the royalty. And now that's all you ever read in the news. It's just,
maybe you moved here for that.
Mr. Prince did something else today, and I don't care.
Well, it's not even Mr. Prince. It would just be Harry.
I don't see them making video games. See, they eat up our time too. They're all over the place. I hate this. Stop.
Yeah, let's. Well, okay. Now I do have to ask. Do you think Garfield is his last name? Because if we're following the model of House MD,
I think it's a good question, because I think like a lot of people, like James and I grew up with 2 cats, and sometimes you'd like jokingly attach your own last name to like the cat's name, but typically you just refer to them as their their Christian name. And I think probably Garfield's name would be Garfield Arbuckle.
Legally, probably, yeah.
No, I Googled it, and when you type in Garfield cat last name, the first thing that comes up is Bill.
Lasagna.
It just says Bill. Garfield is a fictional cat and the protagonist of the comic strip of the same name created by Jim Davis. But it just says Bill, like in all caps. Not all caps. It's like,
that's like the Google suggested answer is Bill.
Yeah. So it's from the Wikipedia though, so I'm really confused about that one.
I'm cool with that. That fits for me. That tracks.
Garfield Bill
MD.
Well, I guess Dr. Phil goes by his first name. So.
Yeah,
that's true.
But
that's true.
I think it should be James. So rather than having James Garfield, you have Garfield James. That's where they got the name from, I'm pretty sure. So, James Garfield really liked lasagna. That's where that came from.
I had a teacher in high school with the last name Garfinkel, and absolutely more than once I accidentally called him Mr. Garfield.
Oh, God, that must have happened all the time.
Oops.
Like,
That
Great
poor
guy,
man.
but yeah, I feel bad for that one.
So, talk me through getting back to Garfield MD. So it started as a game jam game.
Mhm.
It is now a fully released game on itch, with potentially multiple chapters coming out soon. There's an all control piece that was built for this. Also, actually, before we even move past this was a collaboration between the two of you, Louis Roots, you already mentioned, and an artist whose name I'm blanking on. Please help me.
B Bravo.
B Bravo. Yes, thank you.
They did a fantastic Garfield, and they even bent the art when we said that the Garfield cat's chest didn't have enough nipples.
Yeah.
They were
Like I
truly
said, this is a spoiler-heavy interview.
I totally forgot about that. The thing that was so funny is the one takeaway is I remember cats have can have like a unique number of nipples. There's standardization. It could be like anywhere from like 4 to 7 or something.
Is that also in the Garfield wiki?
I wish. Yeah, there should be in there. Like, how many nipples does Garfield have?
Okay,
yeah,
let's not sexualize Garfield.
Well, we needed to know because, it's like if you're trying to make Garfield look more like a human, but you're still trying to like adhere to like, it's not an ape. It's not a great ape. It can't just have 2 nipples. It needs to have the proper number of cat nipples. And then you learn online that it's going to have some amount of nipples, but it's not going to be 2. And you need to go back to your artist and you need to have this conversation.
A long conversation.
These are the sort of things that happen in game dev that I feel like people don't like appreciate when they're only looking at the finished product.
I did totally forget that though. I'm glad you remembered that aspect. Sorry to cut you off.
I'm glad that we're getting this behind the scenes look. How did you start this sort of collaboration, and when did you decide that you wanted to make a splayed out stuffed Garfield be part of the game?
I think a lot of it came down to the fact that we know that Louis is fantastic with alt control stuff, and B does really amazing drawings, like particularly like main character, kind of human figures.
Yeah,
and
like key art.
Yeah. So like all the Garfield art in that game, B did, and we really wanted to figure out a way to kind of combine those two. We knew that Joe and I, and I think B and Steggy also, no, not think, I know B and Steggy also helped write the dialogue and the story for that one too a bit. So we wanted to figure out a way that we could kind of compartmentalize things where I could be working on doing the coding, Joe could kind of work primarily on making sure that the narrative kind of came together and did some of the background stuff. And we could kind of split off. And I don't remember if it was like a big chat that we all had, but I know that at some point Louis mentioned that they had a Garfield doll, and it wasn't very hard to get a stethoscope. So you could make a connection by putting this metal stethoscope against a metal pad in front of this little Garfield doll, and that would complete a circuit and count as a button. And it was like, hey, that's a really cool alt control. And then we kind of built the game, not to spoil it, but there's only one moment in the game where you really get to do any kind of stethoscope stuff. So we like the idea of making an alt control game where the main alt control aspect is something that's kind of tantalizingly there in front of you until there's one very specific moment where you actually have to like take the action of, putting the stethoscope on this Garfield doll.
It's like the cherry on top, It's the build up for the like big spectacular action.
The whole game is the build up for the spectacular action.
Yeah. Outside of that, it was really just Jim Davis's call to us when we were in Australia driving across country, and he was just like, "Hey, I'm a huge fan. I know you guys read Garfield. I keep on getting your mail. I promise I won't. I will let you keep mailing me stuff if you make a little Garfield game. If you really love my comic as much as you say you do, you have to prove it." And we were like, "Okay, well, we already wanted to do this, so let's just do it then."
I think one of my favorite photos online is the one of
Jim Davis.
I was gonna say it was Jim Davis and Mike Pence, where like Jim Davis has that like huge note he wrote out to Mike Pence that was like in his office back when Pence was a congressperson. There's some like documentary where they're like interviewing him, and in the background you see this thing.
It's amazing.
And I guess the commonality is they're both from Indiana.
Wow, I did not know this was a thing.
It's such a great cursed image.
We are almost out of time here. I wanted before we close up, I wanted to circle back to a few other things y'all have going on. First off, we're 1 year into Decade Jam. How's it going?
Pretty good. I am so impressed by anyone that's creating anything for Decade Jam, which is a game jam that's running 10 years from 2020 to 2030. The community is mind-blowing. They have their own Discord server. When 1 year passed, the symbol changed from a 10 to a 9, and it's just it warms my heart. You know, it's this thing where I made this thing to be a long-standing performance piece, kind of like the stuff that Joe and I did. And I guess my goal now is I'm trying my best to let it be whatever the community and people want it to be. I have zero desire to kind of I guess you know, get involved or push around anybody. It's like I'm just so amazed. Like occasionally somebody will post in the group like, I'll be this age when the jam ends, and it'll be something insane like, I'll be 27 when this game jam ends, or I'll be 22, and it's like, you're 12 years old. Like, this is something you thought when you're 12 years old. Like, you're gonna be trying to make games for 10 years. Like, that's insane. Like,
you
have
little baby,
so much
you're
stuff
trying to
going
make
on.
games, you little baby.
I mean, in a positive way. It's like I don't know.
In a positive way. This is a positive space.
Yeah,
Joe.
yeah. Come on, Joe. Come on, Jim. This is why Jim Davis doesn't call us anymore. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm really impressed by everyone in that space. It's been I want to say humbling. You know, I just put together this jam page, and I'm very glad people found meaning in it. Also, very fast, I did look it up. I was wrong. Garf was not made during Ludum Dare. It was during the Global Game Jam. And because Global Game Jam, it was in 2017, it means the theme was waves.
Oh, because there's waves. Yes.
I don't know if that's why we put waves in the front or how that spiraled to that point, but it was waves.
Oh, that is a beautiful story.
Wow.
That's all the time we got. If folks want to check out Dr. Garfield, the link is on stream. Goldbram.itch.io/Dr. Arf. You can also, thank you, Joe. You can also check out eCheese Zone at scenepoint.com/eCheese. Follow James and Joe. Damn it, Joe. Via their handles on stream. Join Decade Jam. Buy the fully redacted Mueller report off Amazon. We didn't get a chance to talk about that, but Google it. You'll see. James and Joe, thank you so much for joining. This is an absolute delight.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's great. It's great you guys are doing this, even you know, in the face of the pandemic.
Oh yeah, totally. It's awesome.